Khalid, the guy who was once expected to take over the industry, with many people wondering, where has he been? 2018, 2019, you could not turn on the radio without hearing a Khalid song. Thanks to the streaming era, he grew exponentially, almost overnight, and at one point surpassing Ariana Grande as the most listened to artist in the world. But on the flip, he was labeled an industry plant, with people not understanding how he grew so fast. Some spectators calling his music boring, generic, questioning his vocal tone, target audience, and more recently, his sexuality when he was outed at the end of 2024. In a world where men in pop were declining in audience interest, Khalid was holding on for dear life and starting a new era with a new album coming out this fall. Does Khalid have what it takes to make a comeback? And will people listen again? Hey guys, it's your girl Cameron and I'm back at it again with another video. And today we are going to be talking about Khalid. Been wanting to discuss over the past year since I listened to his last release, Sincere, the whimsical nature of Khalid's career in the industry. He has had such an exponential rise. If you were there, you know. It's only been a year, yes, only a year since his last full-length album release, and he announced a new album coming out, his fourth studio album, After the Sun Goes Down, that will be releasing this October. So what lit that light bulb, and what was the journey to get to all of this? A new look, party visuals, a new single, this new Khalid era, with some fans saying that they completely dipped off, with other people saying, I have not heard that name in years. Numerically once near the top of the industry, people have wondered what happened to the momentum. Male pop artists are allowed to pop in and out per the day. Lil Nas X briefly exited the conversation, and we know he recently made headlines for wandering the streets of LA. Harry Ware, The Weeknd, you know he pops in and out, boom. Justin drop, but Khalid's being passed the mic. Is he? Has there been a steep disconnect? Or is he just a victim of the ever-changing, fast-paced industry, especially in the streaming era? Stay on trend or get left behind. So comment down below, what do you guys think of Khalid's journey? Please stay respectful in the comments. One thing I notice as my channel gets bigger, not only do I have to protect my peace, but I want it to remain a critical, decently positive space. So I'm not going to be tolerating BS comments. I'm not going to be tolerating bullying. I will not be tolerating any hate comments. Please be respectful as well to the artist I am talking about. And if you're not subscribed yet, join the community. Hit that subscribe button down below. Thank you guys so much. And let's get right into the video. You guys know I am the context queen. We gotta give context to the stories we tell. So I'm going to start off. Who is Khalid? Dropping SoundCloud releases, only a few people knew of him during his rise. An artist that would gain respect with like a cult-like audience at debut, but ended up expanding very quickly into the mainstream airways to some people's surprise. He was being carried by the unfolding of the streaming era in the mid-2010s. Now, there's a very important detail about Khalid that I want to put on the table. Do y'all remember when people thought he was British? Do y'all remember that? When people were shocked, they were like, is he not from across the pond? He sings in this like accented cursive voice fight for your love, or fight for your soul, that people couldn't tell was forced or not. But nah, guys, that man was born in Georgia, attended high school in Texas, but I'll give y'all this, he was a military kid, so he moved around a lot. He actually lived in Germany for 6 years as a child, so I think that eclecticness and all of that blend, you can attribute that to him moving a lot. Even branded his debut album, American Teen, to make sure that there was no sense of confusion. We're just gonna put that on the table. He's not British. But 98 born, Khalid signed to an RCA imprint and subsequently released his debut single, Location, at just 18 years old. And this is a song that sparked his mainstream career. His team capitalized on that very early on. They made a lot of smart moves, really prioritizing streaming, but more specifically playlisting. Getting your songs added to different playlists that maybe are sponsored by Spotify or are pushed by platforms. That way people kind of organically find your music sandwiched in between other tracks. His next single release, Young, Dumb, and Broke, also achieved hit status pretty easily, a track detailing how many teenagers felt.
Young, dumb, and broke, hey!
Putting those feelings onto paper and then onto our airways in a consumable way. It's not too complicated, not too complex, but honest. And his first two singles peaked in the top 20 of the Billboard Hot 100. And early on, people likened him to a mainstream Frank Ocean, so he was getting those kind of comparisons. And I would say during this moment in mainstream pop, the songwriter was making a comeback in more of a mainstream way. More pop tracks were rooted in realism, and more fans were starting to become enthralled with the singer-songwriter. They respected the artist who wrote the stuff that they sang. And Khalid was in that wave and brand of, the Alessia Caras, the Billie Eilishes, the SZAs, people, and more particularly kids with something to say, young people with something to say. And these feelings are what carried Khalid into stardom, which happened very quickly. Almost too quick for some people, like suspiciously quick. And that industry plant word came up almost overnight. Everybody was like, wait. The first song, it was like, okay, everybody, you get that one hit. But he just kept snagging them and snagging them and snagging them until some people were like, wait a minute, where did this kid come from? They really leaned into getting him on features. One of these features he would do landed him his highest charting song, right? At number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100. His debut album, American Teen, released in March 2017, and out the gate swinging without much effort, relying on that playlisting, streaming, and also close community with his listeners. And this album landed him his very first Grammy nominations. Now, of course, they did put location in the R&B category, but you'll find that, indeed, he was making music on this album that if another artist made it, it probably would have overall been considered pop. But y'all know where there's a black artist, that best urban contemporary album is never far behind. But the album went platinum. That means it sold over 1 million records. He won the VMA for the Best New Artist in 2017. Khalid was also gaining a hefty overseas base, specifically in Europe. Australia is another place that he's done really well. New Zealand has been another place he's done really well. He was really touching different corners of the earth, and that also really helped him with his global appeal, right? Being able to reach the heights that he did so quickly. And as for his music sound, he really signatures acoustic guitar, piano, sprinkles in those trap beats, there's some R&B elements, and infusing all of the above. Almost minimalist-like tracks and vocals, his arrangements are what creates that emotional pull. Enhancing the texture outside of his voice or even the songwriting, one of the things that I've always liked about Khalid's songs is the instrumentation is it's palpable, and it is going to be the heartbeat of the song. He kept the momentum with the following year, releasing his duet with Normani, Love Lies. The song went to the top 10 of the Billboard Hot 100. Signifying some staying power, perhaps. We were like, oh shoot, okay, another one, thank you. Another one, thank you. Lovely by Billie Eilish.
Another one, thank you.
That duet, absolutely stunning. Great performance from her, great performance from Khalid. He then switched it up again. On the Way, featuring Ty Dolla $ign and Black.
Another one, thank you.
But some people, and I think in hindsight, was there a level of him becoming a little too reliant on features? So he released his first EP, Sun City, in October 2018. So keep in mind, when he came out in 2017, they didn't even do an EP first. They went straight into album mode. And so they finally reeled it back and said, let's slow down the pace and let's do an EP featuring hit songs like Better.
Another one, thank you.
Love that song. Love that song. Nighttime, windows down, breeze through your hair, cruising down the freeway. Better. Nothing feels better than that song. And one of my personal favorites, guys, Saturday Nights. And he continued his fiery run with his next single, Talk, in February 2019. So his second studio album, Free Spirit, released April 2019. That was my first time listening to a full-length project of his. At that point, I was really only tuned into his singles. It was a transformation of his sound, right? We got a little more into this poppy lane, but it was perceived differently by critics. When it first came out, A lot of critics called it a sophomore slump because although the album wasn't bad, a lot of people felt like in comparison to his first album, like it wasn't as identity focused. You could tell that mainstream bug might have bitten him a little bit, but personally, I don't think it happened in a bad way. I feel like some of you guys hear a voice or see an artist and you expect them to stay niche forever. Or you think, oh, they like this alternative route. Oh, they like being a little different. But sometimes your artistry evolves, and I don't think that makes you a sellout or makes your music cheap, because I still felt like the music was good. So there was a question of, is Khalid selling out? Like, oh, this album sounds super mainstream. Like the other one was so raw and real and da-da-da-da. When in reality, I think he was kind of just making music that he wanted to make. I don't think there was this calculated effort to switch the tone of his second album. It just happened. But I thought it was very refreshing, honestly. Like I said, shit sounded straight out of a young adult novel, a young adult film. It became his first #1 album, so he still moved up the ranks commercially. But I can't express enough how on fire he was. World tours, the biggest global artist on Spotify with 50.4 million listeners at one point. One article noting that he surpassed Ariana Grande in 2019. Multiple diamond records, which means 10 million records sold, making him one of 39 artists ever to reach that feat of having multiple diamond records. And also Location being the 4th song by a black male artist to be certified diamond. He was collecting these stats like infinity stones. He was breaking records like he was breaking dishes. Easy. So what happens when something comes what feels like so easy to the public? Your journey happened so fast. It's hard to keep growing exponentially. And like most things do, they change. The world changed. COVID happened and the world stopped. And yes, we were in the streaming era and we still are, but it reached another phase. It started to evolve and the wants and needs of people started to shift. So for Khalid, I want to talk about the R&B pop struggle. So there was this push and pull between people perceiving him as an R&B artist or a pop artist. And as someone who enjoys many styles, I love letting him live in the middle, the liminal space. I'm cool with it. But to me, it was clear that he wanted to switch it up at some point, and audiences weren't sticking around to experience it. His mixtape Scenic Drive released December 2021, and he went R&B like for real, for real. This was his first, to me, primarily R&B project. My guess is that as a mixtape, he either A, wanted to really divert from his normal style, try something different with no strings attached, and maybe the label wasn't as invested or wanted to put as much money into it. And B, there wasn't a lot of marketing dollars put towards it. So I think that aided in people not really knowing about it or it not being advertised or marketed, which led to a drop off. Now, this was supposed to be an EP initially, but Khalid came out a little bit after he announced it and said, actually, we're turning it into a mixtape because this project is more deeper and more personal than that. If it was that good, I would want it to be an EP so it could be pushed and it could be peddled to the public. So I wonder if that was just kind of saving face and just saying that so that he wasn't divulging into any label business. But anyways, to me, it was a solid project. It was darker sonically, but absolutely steeped in R&B. Like if this was a cup of tea, and we had a tea bag, it was steeped in R&B. That was the essence, right? I think of songs like Retrograde, Voicemail featuring Kiana Lede. Ooh, go listen to that once this video is done. They were stunning standouts. So there were some really great records, some filler, but it was a mixtape. But no one was really talking about it, right? It did chart in the US, it charted in Canada, it charted in Australia, but it's just to point out that a slow decline was starting to happen. It was starting to occur. You have this talented kid, in my opinion, fairly new to the game, breaking these records using really no gimmicks, no rage baiting, nothing extra. He's coming on a jeans, t-shirt. He ain't doing too much. People felt like he was constantly singing the same tune after a while, and it became an acquired taste, I think. Same song, different day. At least this is what I was hearing and through my research, to where they weren't really checking for new releases anymore. And this brings me to his most recent album, as of August, okay? I don't care. Sincere was damn good. Tainted, Don't Fall in Love with Me, Sincere, Decline, Stop It. 52 minutes of thoughts, introspection, smooth melodies. I mentioned this album in one of my previous videos. It was like the rollouts aren't rolling out like they used to. I had just found out Khalid had dropped an album, but like, how have you been gone for 5 years? It's been 5 years since Free Spirit. And the label they weren't pushing it. After 5 years of his last album that was wildly successful, it was like they didn't even give it a chance. And in everyone's defense, most of y'all didn't even know he released an album. So whose fault is that? It's not really y'all's fault. Sincere released August 2024. This album was R&B down. Like R&B down. And I wonder if they weren't happy with that direction. But Khalid said, F it, this is what I want to do. And he did it. We're asking for boys. Where are the boys at? Where are they? Where are they? Right? And Khalid was one of the very few that was in the conversation. And then, boom, he's gone. Reason why there was this 5-year difference between both albums. He said, quote, when I debuted, I was 17 years old. I had no true sense of self. I was writing not even from my experiences. I feel like this album is exactly that. I took it back to the basics and I approached it as if I was a debuting artist all over again. So perhaps you can frame this last album, Sincere, as a reintroduction, a not so new artist who was actively trying to reinvent and kind of refresh their career.
I took it back to basics with this album in terms of my songwriting. I really trusted my intuition and kind of let go of all those expectations. It's like I feel like I'm starting all over again.
And because I think Khalid knew that something was stale, he did. For the GP, the general public, it didn't really click, unfortunately. Like, he felt very confident about this album. He felt like, ooh, like this is me. This is what I've been wanting to do. And it didn't stick.
I had a conversation with him and he shook my hand and looked me in my eyes and he told me, he was like, next year is going to be one of the biggest years that you've had in your career so far. He's like 2024.
And the album was great. The album was great. There was a deeper level of sincerity, no pun intended. But there's a more mature sound here. You can tell he's more mature. His vocals are more mature. In the US, it did chart, but it was definitely a disappointing result. There was no cultural conversation around it because A, either people didn't know he dropped the album, and B, I don't even think one single hit the charts. I don't think so. I don't think he had like one big song from this album. Some listeners felt like with Sincere, the songs blended too much or it was a little too long. One fan stuck it to him directly, saying, quote, man, I'm a big fan, but someone's got to say it. This shit sucks. Album is terrible, not one catchy song, completely lost the sound that made you great. Just a whiny album without one good beat. Sorry, bro. I'm disappointed big time. And honestly, y'all, comments like these also to me kind of scream that you're never going to be happy. You're not. Because if they say the same, it's a problem. If they switch it up a little bit, it's a problem. And I'm one of those people that feels like Khalid never deviated that far from like the essence of what he was doing. He never took a 180. But Khalid would end up responding to this tweet saying, this album isn't for you, and that's okay. I'm not going to be the artist you want me to be. So I don't agree with this opinion. Everybody's allowed to have one, but I think his response was valid. I mean, at this point, it's like, y'all never going to be happy. So I'm going to just, for the people who like it, they like it, and the people who don't, they don't. And I think a lot of artists, it's freeing to operate that way, but we also can't deny that they're looking at the numbers. They're looking like, dang, like, how is this performing? They're trying to see how people react. At least the labels are. And we know the industry is always trying to make artists toe a line, pick a side. And perhaps his team never fully had a grasp on where they wanted him to land. What is his legacy going to be? Where are we going to start him? And where do we want to launch him? They found a great strategy to push the music very early on. Very early on, Khalid made it clear that as a Black artist, he didn't want to be boxed in because that tends to happen a lot. Saying, quote, they want to label you an urban artist, or if you're a very soulful artist, sometimes you'll get put in the box of adult contemporary and you can't ever be mainstream. Like, if I stick to this one sound right now in that big year, 2019, 2018, oh, I'm stuck here. And in the same 2019 NPR interview, his A&R, who was at RCA at the time, said, quote, Khalid kind of very carefully keeps a foot in both of these worlds, as in pop and R&B. So when it comes to playlisting, we attempt to reach either with his music, whether it's like, let's try to get the biggest R&B looks, or this is a more of a mainstream sounding record, let's go for more pop and maybe fitness style mood playlists. People who listen to a fitness playlist, a pop playlist, R&B playlist, EDM playlist, sometimes these audiences intersect, but A lot of music listeners, you feed it to them, they listen to it, and then they segment you right there, and they don't really have an interest to see all those sides of you. One audience is happy while the other is hungry. And this is what I think began happening with Khalid. And this is what I dislike also about how rigid genres are, because it forces artists to pick a lane. And I even think it subconsciously forces audiences to pick a lane as well. I have a pretty clear opinion here, though, on this R&B pop conversation. I think his storytelling and vulnerability is something I've been craving in R&B. I think it's something that's been missing, especially with male artists in R&B. He would agree. Hit it, Khalid.
Although I dabble in other genres like pop and EDM and alternative, I feel like R&B really lives in my core, and that's something that I really embrace.
And although he's not like this insanely well-rounded vocalist, I think he has a very unique vocal tone. I love that he's toned down that accent a bit. It's, you know, it's less overstated.
Just watching it for you. 'Cause I can't believe where our passion went.
He has very pretty tonal quality, but there has clearly been a disconnect on the R&B front. It's not selling in the same way that his more pop records were, or his more pop alternative records were. I think about it, like when he was selling out arenas in 2019, like what was the makeup of that audience? I could probably guess it was maybe like young suburban girls in high school. Probably. Is that audience going to translate to this darker but more mature R&B soundscape? Not typically. So what I will give you guys, and what I will be honest about, because there have been some critiques that I can't ignore, and I see where people are coming from. His vocal tone is an acquired taste, for sure, especially early on in his career. If you listen to American Teen, he was laying that accent on thick. To the point where, like, when I heard his speaking voice for the first time, I was shocked because I thought it was going to be completely different. So that was absolutely, in my opinion, a stylistic choice that I've noticed he's dialed down over the years because it wasn't really necessary to the music. I think of a female counterpart like SZA, who really gets flack for her cursive singing. The cursive singing is not everybody's favorite, and Khalid falls into that category of cursive singing sometimes, and I get it. It's not for everybody, and in R&B spaces, there's only so many allowed through the door. And I also think his enunciation is another barrier. Like, you're writing these beautiful, beautiful words, but I don't really know what you're saying. The enunciation thing, though, is not just an issue with Khalid. That's an issue with a lot of artists today. But dang. We can't have one cursive singer in the male department. Y'all strict. Y'all strict. Let him in. But I will say, Khalid, heart to heart, love your music. I say this with love. Work on the enunciation. Because what I think happens is, especially in his last album, they turn that production all the way up. They turn the instruments all the way up. And as beautiful as it is, his vocals completely drown out to where you don't know what he's saying. And then he has this accent still and this thick vocal tone. That's like the main thing. And then we would be so much more golden. Lastly, I want to talk about this new era, the rebrand. We have to talk about him announcing his new album, After the Sun Goes Down, that releases this October. Since his last album, the image shift. For starters, we got the blue hair dye, the party atmosphere for the album cover, the single, the music video. The new single, In Plain Sight, is upbeat. I was moving. I also appreciate the intentionality and translation from his personal struggles and putting that into the art in a way that's celebratory. So for those of you guys who don't know, Khalid was outed in November of 2024 by an ex-boyfriend that Khalid dated about 4 or 5 years prior and hadn't spoken since they broke up. This ex decided to one day come on the internet and out Khalid, posting a picture of them. Accusations were thrown out here and there.
I've never done coke a day in my life. I don't place myself in those scenarios. I'm not in those surroundings. Let's tackle this escorting thing. I've never paid for a day in my life. Ever. I've never paid anybody to date me. I've never paid anybody to be in a relationship with me. That dude and I dated 4 to 5 years ago, y'all.
But nevertheless, everything was all on the table. The ex in question is an aspiring artist. So if you put two and two together, seems like he might have been looking for attention. But this in turn outed Khalid. He's never really been about the drama. He's never been a blog darling. Like, he's never been in mess. When I tell you, he would make his music and mind his business, that's exactly what Khalid would do. And so I remember a lot of people saying, oh my gosh, I forgot about him. Like, this whole situation unfolding was the first time that some people had heard of him, heard his name for real, since like 2018. So that's kind of like, damn, like, not that he wasn't ashamed of his truth, but it was just like, A, it's not your business. And B, damn, like, I've been dropping music. I just got an album out and now I'm in the blogs. And he ended up responding saying, quote, I got outed and the world still continues to turn. Let's get this straight, LMAO. I am not ashamed of my sexuality. In reality, it ain't nobody's business, but I'm okay with me. So he handled it with grace. And after this whole situation, he did end up releasing collabs for his Sincere album. It was a part of his Sincere Deluxe album. And afterwards, he posted songs with Iris Star, Normani. That song is hot. But it didn't go nowhere. And Chloe, none of which charted or made any impact. And I'm sure that was a little alarming because it's like, dang, I got a little attention now in the media and still people aren't listening to this deluxe. And he describes, after being outed, going to the studio a few weeks after, having this burst of inspiration. In June, for Pride Month, he did his very first Pride event after coming out. And that was an emotional experience for him. I remember it was kind of going viral on Twitter.
I want to thank you guys so much for accepting.
For the single, the video features this glass closet, like this viewing mezzanine, and the glass breaks, right? The song title being called In Plain Sight, where I think the inspiration can be kind of sourced from where people perceived him to be in hiding. Like when he came out, one user specifically said the closet is glass, okay? Which Khalid responded saying that he wasn't hiding anything. It's just none of your business. But it seems like he sourced like that imagery and placed it into the art, the glass breaking, hiding in plain sight. I was here this whole time. And he said that he used to drop nuggets and hints in his visuals, X, Y, and Z. And he was very vague with the pronouns he would use. But not only is this direction more upbeat, which it seems like from the consensus, some people were like, we want a little more we want some from you. Not entirely foreign, but perhaps this is him breaking the chains of what people have considered him as background music. Journalist Liz Pelly pointed out, quote, part of the playlist conversation is the idea of background music or music that does really well as a sort of emotional wallpaper, as I've called it. So some people have said because they focus so much on playlisting, his songs sound good sandwiched in between other ones. But that was never his intention. And Pitchfork, when they left a review for his Scenic Drive album or his Scenic Drive mixtape, they said, quote, shapeless and innocuous, mild enough to blend into any top hits playlist. So that background music, that playlist music that has followed him, it has haunted him in his career. So maybe he's perhaps trying to break out of that. He's trying to come up with something less formulaic, fun, but still fit for radio. While a portion of his audience want these upbeat tracks, while a portion of his audience wants R&B tracks, while a portion of his audience wants, it's confusing. Are these potential pitfalls of over-focusing on playlisting, catering him to too many audiences too soon, trying to tackle too many listeners at once before really establishing yourself? Because now you're left in an empty room with echoes of people saying, we want this, we want this, we want this, because you've done everything. He's literally done everything you can think of. He's done it. And these audiences now are fickle. These fans now don't even be sticking around to give you a damn chance. You know what I mean? One song you don't like, oop, you're done, trash.
Do we clap?
So you got to be careful with that game. I also saw some people saying that now that he's come out,
of course he dyed his hair blue.
which I think he's done that before, by the way.
Or of course he's capitalizing off of all of this.
Some people I think have this fear that he's going to go a little rogue. He's going to do the Sam Smith or the Lil Nas X route where, okay, now he's going to start catering to rage baiting and now he's going to be over sexual and all of this. I just want to say, for the listeners And people who automatically, if somebody comes out or they start sourcing that part of their identity in their music and start singing about it, because that is a part of who they are. He's a songwriter. He's singing about his life. Straight artists all the time make their sexuality their personality trait. They use it to sell records all the time. And sure, there are people who complain about the whole sex sells model, but it's interesting to me how Khalid can just dye his hair blue, do some dance steps, and wear a see-through mesh top. And you guys are... There's people who are terrified. That's a weird thing to be afraid of. Like I said, especially when straight artists every day, like, they be experimenting with their sexuality. They be experimenting in their art and using that as a focal point. So to me, it's like, damn, can the boy not have some fun? It's not even like the song deviates that far off from what he's put out before. Like, again, some people are going to want something to be mad about. And you do have people who are homophobic. People, I'm not listening to your music no more. Then don't. You're not welcome here. And as much as I wish people were tuned in to his previous album, Sincere, go listen to it, give it a stream, please, and thank you. I have to admit that this pivot might be what he needed more than his previous record. I think that even with the single, it has more potential to be used in commercials. You can see like Old Navy ad, something. He needs something to get him back into the public. That this album is going to need at least one standout single, one standout hit. But if he doesn't get that, which he's only 27, by the way, he's very young. So keep in mind, it is not over until it's over. But we do know audiences have a short attention span, and sometimes it can be hard to also convert younger listeners. You also want your listeners to grow with you, the people who were there. So for example, I'm around his age, I'm a year younger than him. You want people like me who have been following you to keep up with it, you know, and a lot of people kind of dipped off there. This to me seems deeper for Khalid than just a stylistic switch up. He's always been honest, vulnerable, and raw, but this is not something he's been able to explore in a public way. It's a new chapter, right? It's not just new music. Where I wanted to kind of put a pin in this for now, his album's going to be coming out in October. I will be reacting to that over on my Patreon, so click the link in the description. Yeah. So I think he has it. I know a lot of you guys aren't going to agree with it. Great melodies. So it's listenable. Because some people, y'all be, oh, listen to this. It's not super listenable. You know what I mean? Like the melodies just aren't hitting. The melodies ride. He always takes it to me where he needs to take it. The instrumentation, the live instrumentation aspect is there. The writing. Vocally too, I think he has some interesting moments there as well. He doesn't sound like every single other person. What do you guys think though? Because I still think he's kind of like this 50-50 figure. Hit that subscribe button down below to keep up with my content. Yeah, comment an ocean wave emoji if you made it to the very end of this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye.